Good morning. Those of you going to children's church may be dismissed at this time to go to your classes. Story of a truck driver named Daryl. And each week he hauled goods from Cincinnati to Atlanta. And Joe's Diner was his favorite eating spot on the route. Daryl always stopped for meals at Joe's Diner. One summer afternoon, Daryl parked his truck and walked into the diner. And sitting down in his favorite seat, the third counter stool, he ordered the usual: hot meatloaf sandwich, mashed potatoes, and iced tea. In the distance came a roar and a cloud of dust, followed by the arrival into the parking lot of 12 members of a motorcycle gang riding Harley-Davidsons. Quite a sight to see as the gang parked next to Daryl's truck and set down the kickstands and stomped into the diner. The leader of the gang immediately spotted Daryl. "Well, who is this little sissy at the counter?" he sneered. Daryl merely remained silent and continued eating his lunch. Forming a semicircle around Daryl, the gang members started snapping their fingers in rhythmic cadence, and Daryl just sat there and ate his lunch. One of the gang members picked up Daryl's iced tea and poured it over his head. The others watched. With his napkin, Daryl quietly dried his face, but said nothing. Another gang member picked up Daryl's mashed potatoes and stuck a handful in Daryl's ear, wiping his hand on Daryl's back, but Daryl remained calm and didn't respond. He simply continued to eat his lunch. Although the gang continued to harass and taunt Daryl, he never responded to any of it. Even when Daryl finished his lunch, he only stood up, turned to Joe and silently paid his bill, and he left the diner without saying a word. The leader of the gang laughed and said to Joe, "What a wimp, that guy sure ain't much of a man." Joe, looking out the window of the diner, said, "No, he ain't much of a driver either. He just ran over 12 Harleys." Feels good to stick it to our enemies, doesn't it? Those that are, to see them get what they have coming to them. Those who mistreat us or wrong us or insult us, it's good to get that last word, that last jab, to get back, to get even. I think we'd be lying if we didn't if we said we'd never been there, never had that feeling of just wanting to have the last word, the final say, to get back at those who had something coming to them. Through karate classes, when I was in elementary school, I was taking karate lessons, and one of the things, they didn't want you just punching into the air because you have no target, so they tell you to visualize your enemy. And even if you didn't have one, they say just make one up because they wanted you to have a target, so you could have an enemy in mind. And so I don't know today if you have an enemy in mind or not, but today we're going to talk about what might be considered the hardest commandment. We're on our journey through Luke, and we're going to be stopping in Luke chapter 6, verses 27 through 36 is where we're going to be at today. But before we get to what I think is probably the hardest commandment, let's talk about the greatest commandment. There was a story you probably remember. Jesus was asked, "What's the greatest commandment?" And Jesus says, to love the Lord your God. To love God is the greatest commandment. And then he adds a bonus. The man didn't ask. He says the second greatest commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself. So the greatest commandment is to love God. The second greatest commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself. But I think that maybe the hardest commandment is to love your enemy. And that's what this passage is about. We read in Luke, I'm going to start with verses 27. This is Jesus speaking to the crowd. He's preaching, and he says, "But I tell you who hear me, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. If someone strikes you one cheek, turn to him the other also. If someone takes your cloak, do not stop them from taking your tunic." Talk about loving our enemies. We should probably start with defining a definition of enemies. What do we mean by enemy? And we can look at these verses, I think, to get a description of our enemy, those who hate you, in verse 27. Regardless of how you feel about somebody, if they have those ill feelings towards you, if somebody hates you, then you have an enemy. In verse 28, someone who curses you, someone who insults you or says things against you, maybe in your presence or behind your back, you have an enemy. Verse 29, somebody who strikes you or somebody who takes from you, steals from you, maybe stealing something physically from you, or maybe taking something that you think is rightfully yours, a privilege or a promotion, you have an enemy. So that's our enemy, but it doesn't stop there. It's not just who hates you, but also anyone that we might have those feelings for in return. A rude customer, or a cruel boss, a neighbor, an ex-spouse, or an ex-spouse's new mate. Maybe even a parent, a teacher who has it in for you, somebody who has 21 items in the express lane. So anybody we have those ill feelings towards could be considered our enemy. Anyone who has hurt us physically, emotionally, or spiritually. So when Jesus talked to us about loving our enemies, we should listen. And we think, well, I don't really have an enemy. You know, that's something for superheroes. But we have people in our lives that may hate us or curse us or talk ill of us or people that we think ill of. So we should listen, but when we hear what Jesus has to say, our first response may be, Jesus, have you lost your mind? Because we had this idea of loving your enemies. That sounds simple enough. We don't like it. We don't enjoy it, but we understand it. Love your enemies. But when we really dig into this passage here, it's even worse than you think. But let's start with saying Jesus isn't trying to legislate our emotions. He's not talking about how to feel. Because how we feel about our enemies isn't really the point. It's how we behave towards our enemies that Jesus is getting at. Because when we let our emotions determine our actions, we become slaves to a fickle, unpredictable God. When we act according to emotions. So when Jesus says love your enemies, he's not talking about muster up these loving, mushy feelings for your enemies. Love is a verb. It's an action word. It's a decision to act a certain way. Whether you love your kids, you love your spouse, or you love your enemies, it's all still a conscious decision we have to make, regardless of our feelings on that particular day. We choose to love. And Jesus' command is to choose to love your enemies. So let's look at what Jesus tells us to do. The first one is, do good to those who hate you. We find that in verse 27. Do good to those who hate you. Jesus sets this bar very high. His standard is not just, don't hate those who don't hate you. I mean, sometimes that's hard enough. You have somebody that really, hates you and despises you. It's hard enough not to reciprocate and hate them back. But Jesus is saying more than that. He is saying, do good to those who hate you. When we think of people that we love, then loving is no problem at all. Doing good is no problem at all. But you don't have to feel good about someone to do good for them. I'm going to mess up my slides just to warn you. But verse 32, Jesus says, if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. So Jesus is saying, sometimes we do good things and we want to pat ourselves on the back, but even sinners, even the world, people outside of Christ can do good to people who do good to them. Can love people who love them back. When the relationship is a two-way street, love comes easy. But Jesus is challenging us to a stronger kind of love. It's not about how you feel about them. It's about his command to do good to them. But it gets worse than that. Verse 28 says, "Bless those who curse you." I love it when the Spirit works. I promise that Oakley did not see my notes at all, unless maybe he hacked into my computer. I don't know. But I'm talking about the word "bless" also, and Oakley gave us a good preview of that. Because this "bless" is about our words. He's like, "Bless those who curse you." I mean, a good insult can be so satisfying. You know, a witty, sarcastic comeback, getting in the last word. Can feel really satisfying. If you're like me, though, you think of it like a couple hours later when it's really, I wish I should have said this, or I wish I would have thought of that. But there's just this desire in us to get the last word. You can be ready with the right quip at the right time, and you just feel a sense of fulfillment. But then Jesus says, when your enemies curse you. So when they insult you, when they speak ill of you, when they slander you, when they curse you, this is a verbal phrase. When your enemy curses you, bless them. It's hard to sit there. I remember a phone call we had. Got a phone call from a neighbor across the street from us, and it involved our daughter and her daughter. As you know, us parents can get pretty protective of our kids and stuff. But she was laying into me about. We had a short version is her daughter was not a very good influence, and so we kind of set some boundaries, and Mom thought that was ridiculous, and so I got to hear all about how sorry she felt sorry for our church. If I was their minister, then she felt sorry for our church, and you sit there and take it. It's hard. But what's even harder is Jesus doesn't say just sit there and take it. He says, bless those who curse you. When we hear the word bless, I think we think of that a little too casual, kind of like what Oakley's mentioned. When somebody sneezes, we say, bless you. Straight from my notes, I didn't steal it at all, all right? When people sneeze, we say, bless you. And I was just going to say the South. I've never been to Arkansas. But they say, bless your heart. And now we've lived in the South. And maybe you realize this already. I don't know if this is common knowledge or not. But you got to be careful with bless your heart, because it's got a double meaning. It can be sincere, but it can also mean you're an idiot. So you got to be careful. And when you hear bless your heart, you just got to, But Jesus' audience here, they would have heard this word bless as something differently. Blessing was a powerful word. It was a spoken message. Fathers would give their blessing on their children, and it's giving a message of high value to that person, and it's giving that person a picture of a hoped special future, a special destiny, and it's wishing that special destiny upon them. It's recognizing their value as a human made in the image of God and a positive future that God has in store for them. So when he says, bless your enemies, that's a lot harder to swallow than you might first think. I mean, it's to respond to your enemy with verbal affirmation, with not just not retaliating in negative words, but to think of positive words. It requires you to do the hard work of looking for something good in a person that you've decided is good for nothing. But there's an enormous power and a dignity in replying with an insult, in replying to an insult with a blessing. We're not dragged down to our enemy's level. We actually are taking the high ground. We take the emotional heat out of the moment. We create an atmosphere where tempers can cool. Jesus is all about reconciliation, and when two people are trying to get the last word in, that is not the ground for reconciliation. But it's our goal to emulate Jesus when he prayed for forgiveness. As his enemies were dancing around the cross, celebrating his death, he prayed for their forgiveness. That leads us to the next thing that Jesus tells us to do. It says, pray for those who mistreat you. So, spiritually lifting up our enemies. There's no more powerful response to an enemy and his insult than to say, I'm praying for you. Now, let's not say that in a spiteful, I think there's a way you can try to throw that in somebody's face in a holier-than-thou type attitude, but a sincere attitude. I mean, I could lash out verbally or physically, I could, all these different kinds of ways we could respond, but I choose instead to place it in God's hands, because that's what our prayer does. It places it in the hands of God. And he will do what is right. If justice is necessary, God will be the God of justice. Mercy, he'll be the God of mercy. It can be a frightening thing to think that your enemy is talking to God about you. Might change your perspective. We've all heard of the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have done to you. Almost every major religion has a version of the golden rule. I don't know if you realize that, like Hinduism and Buddhism, they all have a version of the golden rule, but it's only Jesus. But Jesus kind of turned that on his ear a little bit, because for the other religions, it was about not doing things. It was do not do unto others as you would not like things done to you. So in other words, don't do something to somebody if you wouldn't want that to be done to you. So it was a negative spin on that, if that makes sense. It was about not doing. But what Jesus says, it's about doing. Do to others as you would have them do to you. I mean, forever and ever, I thought of the golden rule as that just meant, okay, if you wouldn't like it done to you, don't do it to somebody else. But it's actually do something good. Do something. If you would like something done to you, do it to somebody else. The golden rule is about doing. It's not about not doing. Going to Luke 6, 32 to 33 as we close things off. So what happens? We follow Jesus' command. They're hard commands. If we follow them, we love our enemies. What is our reward? 35, verses 35 and 36 says, but love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you'll be sons of the Most High. So Jesus promises two things if we love our enemies. If you love your enemies, he promises two things. He promises that your reward will be great. Now, he doesn't say what that reward is, but he promises there will be a reward for loving your enemies. We can trust him with that. And that we can trust that this reward will be better than anything we can imagine. As the Bible tells us that every good and perfect gift comes from God. It will gift us more than we can imagine. So your reward will be great. And God's definition of great, these are Jesus' words. I mean, we can have a watered-down version of great, but Jesus says your reward will be great. So what is his definition of great? Can't wait to see. The second thing he promises is you will be children of the Most High. We'll be children of God. We are like our Father. When we offer love instead of hate, mercy instead of vengeance. We choose retaliate. We refuse to choose retaliation. There's blessing over comebacks. You're acting like your Father in heaven. The world will see that. The world is watching us. We preach a powerful sermon to the world when we love our enemies. Let me end with there's countless examples. If you look, get on the internet or look through the news, we see these examples occasionally of this tremendous love and forgiveness for somebody's enemies. I mean, it usually gets a lot of attention because it's not how the world normally acts. You know, and this is just one example. There was during February of 2018, so almost a year ago, the school shooting in Florida, in Broward County. And this is a story about there are several prayer vigils held in the community, and one of these on a Thursday ended up with a request to everyone write an act of good that they would perform in the coming days and the weeks. And amazingly, prayers were read for Nicholas Cruz, the murderer, the one who had committed the shooting. For him, prayers for him, prayers for his family. One reads, "We ask that you would intervene in this disturbed mind and show him the hope that can only be found in you. We pray for your miraculous work to be evident in him and in spite of him." It's hard to pray prayers like that when they hit home. Some strangers in Florida, we would say, well, good for them. If it was our kids, our family, our friends. It's a big challenge to love your enemies. Probably the hardest commandment that we face is to love our enemies the way God commands us to. That love of action, not just not seeking vengeance, but seeking blessing. Right. Father God, you raise the standard high for your children. And we want to be your children. We are your children, and we want to resemble our Father in heaven. Lord, help us to try more and more to take steps towards this concept of loving those who don't love us back, and loving those who mistreat us. Let's take baby steps if we have to, just to whatever we can to get more and more closer to the standard that you've laid out. And forgive us when we do. Just that same we pray. Maybe we should stand and as we sing our closing song. 79. Thank you.
Softly and tenderly, first, second, and last.